Uncle Doug. During this pandemic and all this crap and shit and stupid, what is your drink of choice?
All?
Yeah.
Everything?
Ask me what mine is.
What's yours?
Yes.
I'm trying to think of a way to answer that question, and it probably is just a video of me taking my glass recycling out to the curb.
6 trips.
Like I have to pack the bottles into my glass recycling strategically now, like a Tetris game, because I won't otherwise fit them all in there.
See, this is
I am not healthy.
The wisdom of your older brother. You give at this point, you give up and you just buy the boxes.
Oh,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah, just buy
It's
the boxes.
it's environmentally fine.
It's good for me. It's good for the earth. It's all good.
Well, until they put Everclear in a box, I'm going to have to buy the bottles.
Now it's happening.
Yikes. Well, listen, guys. Not to be off topic or anything, but I do want to. I wanted to say that just last night I was having a conversation with a dear friend, and the subject of his childhood religion came up. Now, he was raised Catholic in the Chicago area, but that wasn't his religion. It turns out that was his cultural identity. The belief system that he was raised in, the one that was a far bigger part of his family life and than the Pope's little Sunday meetup group, was different.
Oh.
He used the word cult, as a matter of fact, and I agree with that assessment. It has some major hallmarks of a cult: controlling, proselytizing, insistent that their members are weak, defective, even insane, and desperately in need of saving. And guess who, for the longest time, was the only group offering that saving? Now, this is usually where we launch into a 20-minute uninterrupted tirade about the crazy bullshit of a cult, usually culminating in a terrifying body count.
Yes.
That is not where this one is headed.
Hooray!
Wow, something different. Okay.
Yeah, we mix it up sometimes. As a matter of fact, I have to be careful because this cult has actually saved lives. Like hundreds of thousands of lives, possibly millions. So I want to make sure that I acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Some of our own listeners owe a big debt of gratitude to this cult for helping them through some really tough stuff, and that's wonderful.
This is a first, this is a first. I don't think we've ever covered a cult. We've covered cults that haven't killed anyone.
Right.
But I don't think we've covered cults that have, quote-unquote, saved anyone physically. Right. Yeah.
But I do want to encourage anyone who has strong positive feelings about this group to keep in mind that even a group that does a lot of good can still be kind of bad. So today we are going to talk about 12-step programs modeled after the famous Alcoholics Anonymous.
This is an audio intervention for me, isn't it?
It's for both of you, really.
Okay.
It's getting scary.
If it's
Usually
an
the
intervention for
interveners
me,
outnumber the intervened.
yeah.
But
If it's
whatever.
an intervention for me, hold on. I just need a drink.
Yeah, that's fair.
Just get this done.
Here's the thing. AA was started with the best of intentions. A group of men, and at that point in 1935, it was all men, got together and tried to help each other with their problematic drinking. This is good and noble. Nobody went into it to get rich or to exert undue influence over others. They just wanted to make each other's lives better. And it kind of worked for some of them. So, great. From a small group in Akron, Ohio, AA grew to be the largest and by far the best-known alcohol use treatment group in the world. How? Mainly by being the only group of its kind for decades. It now has somewhere around 2 million members worldwide and is still going strong. But look.
I'm surprised it's that few.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
That's just a current membership thing. So
Right.
some people come in and out. Who knows?
Right.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the more recent numbers are certainly probably going to get higher due to COVID.
Yeah, we'll see. Not if I can do anything about it, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Because look, for all the undeniable good that AA has done, and all the good that spin-off groups like Narcotics Anonymous and Gamblers Anonymous and Overeaters Anonymous have done, they are not actually that effective.
Right.
Now, AA may dispute that. Their own foundational text, known internally as the Big Book, claims that 75% of people who go to meetings and really, really try get sober through their system. 50% get sober relatively instantly, and another 25% have some months of struggle but eventually straighten themselves out. 75% is a big number.
That's a crazy success rate for any kind of program.
Yeah. But here's the thing. A very big part of Alcoholics Anonymous is anonymity. Everybody's identity is protected. That has made AA pretty difficult to accurately study. Now, AA claims to have done some study of their process, but not much that's scientifically helpful. That 75% number, they seem to have just pulled that out of their asses. That was a best guess based mainly on adding up all the confirmation bias they could muster and then multiplying by thoughts and prayers. Oh, and it was a number from 1955. Some other groups who study alcohol use have done much more exhaustive research and put AA's recovery number at a little lower than 75%. Any of you want to guess where we're at?
I'd say 10.
Yeah,
Well,
I'd say 15.
Lance Dodds, a retired Harvard psychiatry professor, in his book The Sober Truth, debunking the bad science behind the 12-step programs and the rehab industry, put the number between 5 and 8%.
Wow.
The American Society of Addiction Medicine offers the only slightly less gloomy figure of Mark's 10%. Now, 10% of 2 million is still 200,000. And that's 200,000 folks who have conquered a very difficult problem, and I celebrate that. But yikes.
Yeah.
A lot of people are left out in the cold by AA. And they don't have to be, but we'll get to that. First, I want to talk about what AA is. As I mentioned, Alcoholics Anonymous was founded in the 1930s by Bill Wilson, a self-confessed alcoholic and world record holder for the most people claiming to be his friend.
A little AA humor there for you.
Boom, baby.
Yeah.
After a hospital stay where he was treated for his alcohol use with hallucinogens, he had an epiphany in which he felt the presence of God, which, yeah, you might when you're taking doctor-prescribed belladonna. Definitely do not try that at home, kids. Well, when he was released from the hospital, he started meeting up with a bunch of fellow God-believing drunks and found that it was very helpful to talk openly and honestly with each other about their difficulties. AA rose out of those meetings. Pretty much everybody knows about the 12 steps that form the foundation of AA's modality for dealing with substance abuse. It's kind of like the 10 Commandments. We all know that they exist and can even name a couple, but we haven't really read them or given them any thoughts.
I want to start putting the 12 steps on courthouse grounds.
Right? I mean, that might be better than what's there now. So,
yeah.
Do you guys know any of the steps? Can you think of any?
Yeah, I know you have to make amends.
There you go.
I think you have to
admit you're powerless in the face of your demon or whatever. You have to acknowledge the big one. You have to acknowledge a higher power.
There you go.
Right.
So, yeah, step 9 is the making amends one. I think that one's really good. I'm very fond of that idea.
When are you going to get around to it?
Yeah, give me time. Give me time. I'm still on steps 2 and 3 here.
Okay.
I also knew about step 2, which, Uncle Mark, that was your believing in a higher power.
Yeah.
That one I'm less fond of as an atheist. But mind you, anyone who's in a 12-step program will be quick to point out, you can determine what that higher power means.
Right.
So, okay, I've always thought that I could just, gloss over that step 2 and be okay. But here's the thing. Fully half of the steps involve God or whatever higher power you choose. And that higher power can't be you, because so many of those steps are about how you have to have this external powerful help, or none of this is going to work. So let me just go through a few of these steps. Step 2, and these are all worded in a collective past tense, as in we went to the store, which I find odd, but whatever. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him.
problematic.
Step 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to other human beings the exact nature of our wrongs. Step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And step 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. Well, holy shit, Bill W., that's just religion right there. There's no science of any kind in any of that. Just straight up magical thinking. And asking a powerful wizard to expecto patronus away our defects isn't the only thing that's religious about Alcoholics Anonymous. AA took another equally stupid and even more damaging lesson from its religious upbringing. Shame. Built into almost every step is a declaration that the member is broken, unworthy, just a piece of shit in need of saving. In just the steps I've already listed, while we were focused on the bullshit emphasis on God, we were also told that we were wrong, defective, full of shortcomings, and even insane. The very first step is for the member to admit that they are powerless over alcohol. This message that someone whose drinking is problematic is now defective is, as it turns out, pretty counterproductive. As a matter of fact, one of the big things that AA requires is an admission that, quote, I'm an alcoholic. Now, on the surface, that seems good, right? Admitting to the problem is definitely a useful step toward recovery. But there's an issue there. I'm an alcoholic isn't actually admitting a problem. It's a declaration of an identity, and there's a big difference. Here's the thing. There are a lot of very different reasons why a person's alcohol consumption might become problematic. Psychological reasons, physiological/genetic reasons, trauma, social, cultural factors, family history, any of these or a combination of them.
They have a podcast where they read too much about fucked up cults and it's just twisting their brain.
That one's actually not a good excuse.
I'm spitballing for a friend.
Okay.
Look, Bill's.
Any of these can lead to problem drinking or drug use. But once a person declares that they are an alcoholic rather than a person who drinks problematically, the focus is on the drinking and not on the underlying cause. For years, we've been told that alcoholism is a chronic disease and that a person who is a problem drinker in their 20s must label themselves an alcoholic for life. And be ever vigilant against the siren call of drink. Full abstinence for life was the only way out. But the science tells us that way of thinking might actually be unhelpful. Because here's the thing. People like drinking, and the truth is that they don't want to stop. What they want is for their lives to get better. And they can see that their drinking is very much getting in the way of that. For most, if you ask them whether they'd rather give up alcohol altogether or just tone it down to normal, non-problematic levels, they'd choose the latter. And the newest research says that not only is that possible, it's actually a better, more hopeful model for recovery. The problem with AA's total abstinence modality is that humans don't work in all or nothing extremes. That's just not our reality. We may want to, but we don't. If we did, church would work. The priest would tell us tell us what all the sins are and everything that's good, and everyone who believed him would just act right from then on. But we know that ain't the case. And the same story applies to AA. An AA member gets chips, for instance, little coins commemorating how long they've gone without a drink. 24 hours, a week, a month, a year, etc. They're praised and rewarded for their abstinence. But if they take one drink in a moment of need or weakness, boom, they're off the wagon, back to square one. That's devastating.
Yeah.
Right.
And when you're staring down the barrel of that level of failure, well, shit. You might as well turn that one drink into a 3-day bender. What the fuck is the difference at that point?
Right.
On the other hand, Doug? Yes?
Oh no, I just grunted out of interest.
Yes.
There's no B's or C's or D's. It's A or F.
Correct.
Right? And so, and I think you're completely right. Creating an alcoholic as an identity for yourself, like a person with cancer isn't a canceric.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. There's more to you than that. And
right. It's just an issue you're having at the time. And also creating this sense of utter helplessness. This is classic cult. Creating a sense of utter helplessness in the absence of this structure.
Yeah.
It's, most people who have a drinking problem who quit for a period go back, or they maybe they want to be completely abstinent, but they can't always do it. So if you make them just feel utterly fucking despicable for something that is going to happen, that's personality breakdown. It's classic cult bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there's a scene in so many movies where the alcoholic is being tested, right? And he gets the drink poured and he stares at it. And it's just, it goes to what you're saying, Uncle Dan, where it's that kind of like, if you cross this Rubicon, there be dragons and ruin. And, if you have that one drink, you will utterly explode your life. That stigmatizes and brings in such levels of guilt and terror and fear that it doesn't seem terribly useful to think that way when we are just beings that make mistakes on a constant basis.
Right.
As I think I've made painfully clear on this episode.
Indeed. Now, on the other hand, if your recovery modality says that one drink here and there isn't a really big deal and allows for the whole thing to be a process, then a person can keep choosing. Maybe this one drink feels like a bit of a setback, but it's okay. I'll just keep it to the one drink and then try to keep improving.
Yeah.
Another issue is that once a person is labeled an alcoholic, their problems are suddenly all organized around their drinking and not the other way around. Now, Dr. Adi Jaffe, who's a UCLA psychologist and author of the book The Abstinence Myth, who's a former addict himself, talked about a client he had who came into him because her drinking had become a huge problem. She had what many would say was a perfect life. She was a lovely sorority girl with a handsome, successful husband and 3 kids. They were wealthy and wanted for nothing. But she had become unable to control herself with alcohol. Now, her marriage was strained. Her friends were worried. She was in trouble. Well, the alcohol, in the alcoholic identity model that we've all been taught, that had her and everyone around her focused entirely on her drinking as the problem. Dr. Jaffe's approach was the opposite. He started by saying, I don't care how much you drink, let's work on you. Within a few sessions, he asked her, so what are we going to do about your marriage? The problem wasn't that the drinking was straining the marriage. The problem was that the marriage was strained, so she drank. Her recovery began when she started working on the underlying problem. Now, the flip side of the alcoholic as identity problem is that a person who has been sober for years can also continue to ignore their other problems. A person can say, I can't help it that I'm depressed or that I have anger issues or what have you. I'm an alcoholic.
Yep.
And suddenly everyone around them nods and moves on. It's a perfect place to hide if you don't want to work on yourself. And that was what led to my friend's indoctrination into the religion of AA. That friend that I was talking about at the beginning of the segment. He was a kid when he was a kid when he started to go to the meetings. He had never touched a drop, but alcoholism was such a part of his mom's identity that the whole family had to go to meetings.
Wow.
There he was, just in a group of other family members of alcoholics and whatever, which is good. That's support, right? But he was taught that if one family member was an alcoholic, he was probably one too. They spent hours telling him that something was wrong with him and they needed to figure out what it was. That's fucked up.
Super fucked
Even
up.
if he's not, and this is what's crazy. He's not sure that his mom ever really had a problem with alcohol. She may have binged a few times in her youth, and because the family had alcohol problems, she flipped out, went to AA, and found a new religion. And that's the thing. AA has trained us all to look at alcoholism in a very specific way. You know that? Did you know that the psychiatric community doesn't really even use the term alcoholism anymore? They don't even talk about alcohol abuse. The current wording is alcohol use disorder, because all that shame and identity stuff is kind of bullshit. It's the use that's disordered, not the person. And the treatment needs to look at why that person is using in a destructive way, not at what's inherently wrong with the user. Back in the 1930s, Alcoholics Anonymous was probably the best chance a person had at getting problematic drinking under control. The odds were still wildly stacked against it actually working, but it was something. But in the better part of a century since its founding, AA hasn't changed its foundational principles at all.
Right.
That, as much as anything, is what shows us that this is a religion rather than a science. And meanwhile, the science is moving forward. There are a lot of different recovery programs popping up all over the world. Some are much more science-based than others. So, there's medicines that are really helping. There are new therapies that have high success rates. And here's the thing. I don't know enough to even be able to recommend one over the other. Everybody's journey is different, and people need to find help that works best for them. And that may even include going to AA meetings.
Yeah.
The support and camaraderie there is real and can be really great. But if you're struggling, just know that AA is not the best recovery the world has to offer.
Well, that's the thing. A 5 to 10% success rate. Not having any of this information in front of me, I'd love to know what so many of the other strategies and resources and programs, what their success rate is, if it's around the same. Because that's
there's a lot of new science that's showing. There are places. There's a place in Finland that was showing like above 50%. I don't remember exactly what it was. There's a lot of places that are showing high percentage rates of recovery.
When I was a fairly young guy living in Hollywood, we used to call it gay A, because a lot of non-drinking gay guys went there to hook up, because there were like whole gay AA meetings, which is kind of hilarious. But I also know it's funny, Dan, because I knew years ago I worked with a guy who was a very accomplished professional in the film business, like a real dude, right? And he was quite a bit older than me, and he was kind of towards the end of his career, and he described himself as an alcoholic, and he hadn't had a drink in probably 35 years. Yet we were out in the middle of nowhere shooting, right? And he had to, if he did not go to a meeting every week, he thought he was going to fall right off that wagon. And so he drove like 3.5 hours to some place every week where there was some tiny meeting in a church basement. And it's like, aside from all the other cult behavior, you have to attend a meeting every week, which sounds pretty churchy to me.
Right. And look, if it's helping him, more power to you. I'm not here to shit on things that work for people. But the problem is that AA is the only thing that most people know. Like, it's the only thing that comes immediately to people's minds. And it's like kind of one of the worst options that we have. It can still help, but
I think
if we do a little bit of research,
when you're in the throes of severe drinking, you kind of any lifeline is necessary, right? And if people need to get to an AA meeting to kind of acknowledge that they've got an issue and find support from people, then go.
Yeah.
But I'm with you, Dan. I think it's very frustrating that the first two tenets, the first two steps of the 12-step, are basically disempowering.
Yeah.
Because
and then a bunch of God.
We're here we are, three atheist podcasters. If you accomplish something, whether it's getting off of alcohol or getting your drinking under control or climbing Everest, you did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it should be empowering. It should be focused on the self and not saying, you're powerless and there's a higher power you need to appeal to.
Yeah,
I find it very frustrating.
Your weakness will follow you through the rest of your life.
Exactly.
Just like Mark was talking about with that guy that you were working with. Literally, the concept is you're never going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have to be the case. And most of the new science says that doesn't have to be the
You
case.
broke your life the first time you took a drink, and you can never fix it.
Right.
You just have to live broken.
It's an original sin situation.
It's an original sin situation. And you know, something that is also very problematic about AA that you didn't cover here because you covered plenty, but that a lot of times it is court-ordered in America.
Exactly. That's
Right.
100% true. As a matter of fact, a very high, I think over 50% of people who attend AA are there compulsorily.
Yeah,
because
that is the government forcing you into, and I wouldn't even call this quasi-religious. It is a religious institution.
Yeah.
And it was, and you touched a little bit on Bill and the foundations of it, and his, you know, having a spiritual experience on psychedelics. But there's a ton of spiritualism embedded in the foundation of this.
Well,
right?
yeah. I mean, even the I think the final step mentions the word spiritual.
Yeah.
So it's like, come on, you guys. This is not. There. Like I said, you know, I can't say it enough. This has helped lots of people.
Yes.
But there's so much more help out there, and people need to know that there's more help, and that there's better help, and that there's more
Right.
effective stuff. There are new drugs that are coming out that you know, I was reading about naloxone, I think is what it's called, and it's, you know, what's interesting is that it's an opiate inhibitor preventer.
Yeah. The cops in Vancouver carry it. Yeah.
But what's nice about it is that apparently the endorphins that you get from alcohol, which is what makes you feel so good, are opiates. And so when you inhibit those receptors, you don't want to drink again.
Oh,
you don't need it anymore.
You're saying that they respond like they're responding to opiates, that they aren't opiates, but
Right. Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of good science out there. More comes in every single day. And look, so many of us have worked so hard to get out of magical thinking and into reality-based life.
yeah.
So it seems crazy to let a difficulty with drug or alcohol use drag you back into the religious muck.
Yeah.
Look,
Totally.
everybody out there, you're a good person. You're enough. Get
Yeah.
the help you need to do the work, and do the work you need to do, and find a healthier, happier life.
Yeah, and I would say if it works for you, then you should stick with it, but you should also explore other things, because if it really has a 5 to 10% success rate, that is a function of something some very desperate men who were not scientists came up with in 1935 after one of them had a hallucinatory experience, and their program hasn't changed since.
Yeah.
That's what I
Right?
find the
That's
most frustrating is you know, because it's everyone knows what it is. We all are aware of it. We even know what it's like to be in an AA meeting without having gone to one.
It's so ubiquitous in culture
It's so
and
ubiquitous.
media. And,
But like, guys, like nothing that was founded in 1930 should exist today unaltered or unimproved upon.
Right?
Right? Fucking fix it, man.
Maybe a pickle recipe can last that long.
I feel like you're taking a direct shot at Mr. Hitler, and I don't care for that. Yeah.
Fucking
yes,
fix it, guys.
Look
Update
to the
this shit.
science.
Yeah.
They're
Look to the
learning new
science.
stuff every day. Find something with a proven track record that doesn't tell you that you're a broken, powerless person, and you'll be all right.
Yeah, that's what marriage is for. All right,
Yeah.
go with that. Bottoms up.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.